Hello, this is Tim Lyman, creator of CiteIt.net. This video is intended for programmers who want to learn more about the code used to construct CiteIt.net's contextual web citations. Let's start by going to the home page at CiteIt.net and then scrolling down to view the sample code section and clicking on View Example Code. Here we see two examples, the second of which includes these expanding arrows which expand the context of the quote. And the first one includes a pop-up which shows the context of the quote using a pop-up. So you may wonder, where does this data that is used to display the context, where does this context come from? So if you right-click on your browser and click Inspect if you're using Chrome, go to Network and reload the page. There you'll see all the components of the page, and you'll notice that there's a long number or hexadecimal number which includes a JSON file that displays the context of this quotation. Here you can see the quote matches the left-hand side, and the context before and after is pulled from this JSON quote. Now you might wonder, well, how does this UI generate these expanding arrows and pop-up? Well, you have to read the code to learn that exactly, but I want to show you how you can easily switch between pop-up and expanding arrows. So I'm going to go to my FTP editor and find this particular file. And I'm going to do a search for this first quote, "Forgive his pride." So I'll search for his pride. And I see the code. In this case, this is the beginning. It says, in Chapter 5 of Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth confesses how Darcy offended her. And then you can see the quote is a Q tag, which may be unfamiliar to you, but Q tags and block quotes are similar in that they both involve quotations. But by changing from the block quote, from the Q tag quote to the block quote, this first example will change from a pop-up to a expanding quote. So I'm going to click Save and reload the page. And you can see now the arrows appear above and below, and you can expand it. So what if you want to go back? Well, that's very simple. You just find that block quote again and change the tag back to a Q tag. Oh, one more. Okay, and now it's a pop-up. We can click on it and it displays. You'll notice that this particular JSON file comes from read.citeit.net, which is the location of the web service, the CiteIt.net web service. Since you've seen me work with this example code, you probably want to know where you can get a copy of the original source code. So if you scroll down the page to download, GitHub download in the footer, click on the GitHub download link, and you'll see a green button that says code on it. You can download with Git or you can download with zip. So I'm going to download with zip as an example. I'm going to open my downloads directory. I'm going to unzip the file into a folder. And I'm just going to rename it because I've already got a copy of this code. I'm going to copy this up to my website. And while that's occurring, I'm going to go back to the example page. And I'm going to change the URL. Instead of saying sample code, I'll say demo code. Now this page loads, but it doesn't have the contextual data to display the arrows above or below or to make the pop-up work. So if you look over here, this is the file that the code is looking for. And since this is a different URL, a different path than the other version we were looking at, it requires a new JSON file to be created. So before we do this, let's just go to the folder that we're going to be creating the JSON file in and make sure that we have write permission. So I'm going to go in my terminal here to the demo code, and this is the CiteIt we're going to give the web server user, which is www.data, permission to the CiteIt JSON folder, and we're also going to give it write permission. Okay, so now the question is, how do we create these JSON files? Well, we get the URL from the page, and we click on New Submission in the footer, and we paste in the URL, and let's see if this works. So this is contacting the web service, and it's running a Python script which contacts the original source, and it downloads and creates a JSON file with the context. So it looks like it worked. Let's just go to the folder. Okay, it looks like it did. This is the, if I look over here on the left, I can see that it looks like this is the file that we're working with. So now if I go back to the examples, it looks like the contextual data is there, and these files display properly. I'll just click on this pop-up, and yep, the pop-up works. So that's how you create the JSON files. You go to the new submission section, and you paste in the URL of the page that has the block quotes or Q tags with the site URL, and you click index, and it will make a call to the CiteIt web service, which will create these files, and then you'll have a copy of them on your own server. If you want to, you can change the URL in the JSON file so that it points to your own server rather than the CiteIt.net web server, and I'll show you where to do that. If you go to demo code, if you go to JS versions and look at the latest version, you can see this is the URL where the JavaScript is being pulled from, and if you want to make it pull from your own server, this is the line that you would want to change. This last section will be an overview of the JavaScript code and its dependencies. So I'm going to show you first in the Development Tools viewer. You can see that there's a number of dependencies here: jQuery, jQuery UI. These are the dependencies that are JavaScript: jQuery, jQuery Migrate, jQuery UI, Forge SHA-256, which is a hash library, and this is a library to detect YouTube and Vimeo and SoundCloud and other providers so that you can create embed codes for them. The style sheets that are used are the jQuery UI style sheet, and this is the custom style sheet for CiteIt. and I'll show you the main dependency, which is found in the JS folder. You can see here JS versions, and this is the latest version. It's always named CiteIt -context. And if you open this, you can see, as I referred to earlier, this is the URL that it's pulling the JavaScript from, but this is how it works roughly. There's a jQuery function which is looping through the code, the HTML, and it's looking for all block quote and Q tags that have a site address in them. And when it finds a URL that matches, it constructs a hash key, which is comprised of the quote, the citing URL, and the cited URL. It takes those two together, and it uses the forged SHA-256 hash library to construct a hash value, which is that alphanumeric hex name. And then it takes that name and it requests a file on the CiteIt.net web service that matches that hash key, the result of that hash key. And it loops through the code looking for Q tags. In this case, you can see here the tag is Q, and it creates a hidden container where it stores the data, and then it appends this then to a pop-up window. You can see there's a pop-up. And if it's not a Q tag, if it's a block quote, it uses these div sections, and these div sections are hidden, but when the person clicks on the arrow, the div sections appear. And so that hiding and showing is what allows the interface to be animated. And this is the arrow. I think it's a up arrow, and this is a down arrow. You can style this with your own CSS if you like. This concludes the first CiteIt.net developer video. In this video, I demonstrated where the CiteIt contextual data comes from, how to get a copy of the front-end sample code, how to make a request that the web service generate contextual JSON data for a URL, and how the CiteIt.net custom JavaScript manipulates the DOM to create the CiteIt UI. I hope this video has been helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can reach me by email. CiteIt.net is an open source project whose goal is to create a higher standard of citation for news organizations, academics, and web authors. If you have a suggestion or would like to become involved in the testing or programming of the project, feel free to contact me by email. CiteIt.net aims to change norms, so next time you see an unsourced quote or an argument, ask them, "Can you cite it? Can you cite it?"